Not an email, not a text, an actual envelope, thick and heavy, with my name written in my mother's looping cursive, the kind of handwriting that looked elegant from a distance, but shook if you looked too close. I found it wedged between the gas bill and a grocery coupon, just sitting there like it belonged in the world of the living. The postmark said Rowan Estate, Santa Clara. I hadn't seen that address in 7 years for a minute. I just stared at it. My coffee went cold. My heartbeat didn't. I thought about throwing it out. I really did. That house, that family, that name, every piece of it was a trap disguised as tradition. But something about the weight of the envelope made me open it. Maybe curiosity. Maybe that old, stupid instinct to hope they'd finally said something kind. Inside was a letter and a document. The letter was short, typed, and signed by my mother in blue ink. Dear Mark, your father and I are finalizing the terms of the estate. We want to make sure everything is handled fairly. You are entitled to a portion of the inheritance, provided you agree to the attached conditions. Please read carefully before contacting our attorney. With love, month at last line, with love. Hit harder than anything else. Love had never come from her without a condition attached. The attached document was a legal draft titled the Silence Clause. The language was clean and professional. Recipient, hereafter referred to as Mark Rowan, agrees not to publish, discuss, or otherwise disclose any personal or private details pertaining to the Rowan family, its members, or its operations in any public or private format, including written, digital, or verbal media. Then the number, $750,000. That was the offer. $750,000 for my silence. My first reaction wasn't anger. It was numb amusement. Of course this was how it would end. Not with forgiveness, not with a conversation, but with a contract. Even in death, my parents were trying to edit the story. I set the papers on the counter and leaned back, staring at the ceiling. The silence in my apartment pressed against me like a wall. 7 years of distance, of therapy, of building a life that didn't orbit around them, and yet one letter, one signature, had the power to make it all tremble again. That night, I didn't sleep. I poured myself another cup of coffee at 8 a.m., sat on the couch, and opened my laptop. The document glared back from the screen. I thought about the stories I'd written over the years, not the ones people read, the ones I never showed anyone. Stories about control disguised as love, about fathers who taught silence better than affection, about mothers who smiled through cruelty. Every word of those stories had come from the house behind that estate gate. Now they wanted to buy the rights to my silence. I closed the laptop, but the thought kept circling. $750,000 could change my life, pay off the debts, the rent, the endless anxiety of freelance writing. It could buy me time, peace, even freedom, but not the kind of freedom I'd been fighting for. Because what was peace worth if you had to bury your truth to get it? The next morning, I called the number at the bottom of the letter. Rowan and Blythe Legal, a woman's voice said. This is Mark Rowan, I said. I received a letter regarding my inheritance. A pause, then the click of keys. Ah, yes, Mr. Rowan. Your mother mentioned you might call. Who's handling the estate? Your parents' attorney, Mr. Blythe. Would you like to set a meeting? Sure, I said. Tomorrow. I almost hung up. Then I added, tell my mother I won't sign anything yet. Silence on the line. Then a quiet, polite, I'll make a note of that. The drive to the old neighborhood felt like slipping backward in time. The streets hadn't changed. The same rows of manicured lawns, the same too perfect mailboxes, the same smell of expensive neglect. Rowan Estate sat at the end of a private lane, hidden behind a gate and years of unspoken things. When I pulled up, the gate was open. I could see the house clearly. White columns, green shutters, the oak tree I used to climb when I was 9. For a second, I almost turned around. But then the front door opened. My mother stood there, small as ever, wrapped in her beige sweater like armor. Mark, she said, you look older. So do you. We stood there, the air thick with everything we weren't saying. Finally, she stepped aside. Come in. The house smelled the same, lemon polish and something floral, too sweet to be real. Every photo on the walls was still perfectly aligned. Family portraits, vacations, charity events. except one. The photo that used to hang in the hallway, me, at 16, holding my first short story award, was gone. Of course it was in the sitting room. My father waited by the fireplace. He hadn't changed. Same gray suit, same posture that said, "This is my world and you live in it. Mark," he said, like my name was a chore. "Good of you to come." Wasn't sure I had a choice, I said. "You always have a choice. You just have to live with the consequences." He gestured toward the folder on the table, the same one from the letter. I didn't sit. "So this is it," I said. "The inheritance comes with a gag order." "It's not a gag order," he said smoothly. "It's protection. For all of us." "From what?" "The truth." His jaw tightened. "From slander. You've made it clear you see things differently. I see things how they happened. You see pain where there was discipline, distance where there was guidance. You've always misunderstood us." I laughed softly. "That's one word for it." My mother spoke up, voice trembling. "Mark, please. It's not meant to hurt you. We just don't want—" "What?" I said. "The world to know what it was like to live here." Her eyes flicked to the floor. That was her tell, the one she had when she was lying. Dotmer, Blythe, their lawyer, entered then, tall, clean-cut, and painfully polite. He carried another set of papers. "If you sign, Mr. Rowan," he said, "the funds will transfer within 72 hours. And if I don't," he gave a rehearsed smile, "then your portion reverts to the estate. Your parents' discretion." My father leaned forward. "Think carefully, Mark. You've always struggled financially. This is our way of helping." "Helping," I repeated, the word sour on my tongue. "Yes, we want you to have security." "You mean silence?" The air in the room thickened. My mother's hand trembled around her teacup. My father's gaze didn't move. I looked between them, to people who had spent decades rewriting reality, until even they believed it. Then, I said quietly, "I'll think about it," and walked out. That night, I sat in my apartment again. The document spread across the table. I reread every clause, every paragraph. It wasn't just about not publishing. It forbade any discussion of family matters in public or private. That meant therapy, friends, even my writing notes. They didn't want silence. They wanted erasure. I closed my eyes and thought about all the nights I'd spent writing under a desk lamp, stories that weren't fiction at all, just memory wearing a disguise. That's when I realized this wasn't about inheritance. This was about ownership. They still thought they owned me. I turned the page over, grabbed a pen, and wrote across the back in bold ink, "My silences, not for sale." Then I folded it back into the envelope and sealed it shut. Tomorrow, I'd deliver it myself, not because I owed them anything, but because I wanted to see the look on their faces when I said no. The next morning, I woke before sunrise. The city outside was still half asleep, buses groaning down wet streets, distant sirens echoing through the fog. My apartment was quiet, the kind of quiet that used to scare me, but now felt earned. I sat at the kitchen counter, the letter in front of me, half a cup of coffee growing cold beside it. The ink I'd written last night, "My silence is not for sale," had bled slightly through the paper. I traced it with my thumb, watching how the words had spread, just like the truth does when you try to contain it. I didn't drive to the estate right away. I wanted to take one last detour, to remind myself why I'd left in the first place. The old neighborhood was unchanged. Same cul-de-sacs, same trimmed hedges, same perfect emptiness. But when I pulled up to the old high school, something inside me twisted. It had been years, but I could still see my father's car parked right out front, engine idling, the man himself inside, waiting to pick me up. I was 15. It had been the day I'd won first place in a statewide writing competition, my first real piece, Echoes of Quiet Rooms. The judges had called it mature, unsettling, and heartbreakingly honest. When they asked me where I got the inspiration, I said, "My family." The audience had laughed. I hadn't. That night, Dad waited in the car with his hands gripping the steering wheel like he wanted to break it. "You embarrassed this family," he said before I'd even closed the door. "It was just a story," I said. "Fiction, fiction," he barked. "You told strangers we're cold and controlling. You made your mother cry. She didn't even read it. She didn't have to. People called." He drove in silence after that. The kind that suffocates. More than it protects. At home, he threw the trophy in the trash. Stories don't feed you, he said. They don't build anything. You want to be a man, you learn how to work, not whine. That night, I lay awake listening to the rain hit the window, the sound almost covering the silence of the house. Almost. Mom didn't speak up. Not then. Not ever. Her silence wasn't absence, it was participation. When Dad punished, she watched. When he lectured, she agreed softly. Her favorite phrase was, "You know how your father gets." When I was 17, I asked her once, "Why don't you ever tell him to stop?" She'd smiled gently, the way she always did when she wanted a conversation to end. "Because, sweetheart," she said, "he means well. But meaning well doesn't make bruises on your voice any lighter." By the time I was 19, I had 2 scholarships, one for literature, one for journalism, both of which my father called useless. "You'll major in business," he'd said, something practical. I already accepted the journalism offer. He'd gone still then. In that dangerous way he did before yelling, "You ungrateful little." "Let him choose, Mom," had said suddenly. It was the first time I'd heard her raise her voice in years. He looked at her like she'd betrayed him, then at me. "Fine," he said finally, "go. But don't expect a cent from me." He meant it. I left that fall with one suitcase and a $100 bill from my grandmother that my mother had slipped into my hand. At the bus station, whispering, "Don't tell him." That was the last time she hugged me without guilt attached. The years that followed were lean. I worked night shifts at a copy shop, took freelance gigs writing product blurbs for websites no one read, and slept in a shared apartment that smelled like ramen and dust. But every word I wrote felt like oxygen, and every rejection letter hurt less than a dinner at that old table ever had. Once, after my first article got published in a small online magazine, I emailed my mother a link. No reply. A week later, I got a text, "Please don't post family matters publicly. Dad's upset again." That was all it took. One line, and I stopped sending her anything for years. When I finally made enough money to move into a real apartment, I hung exactly one picture on the wall, not of them, not of me, but of a blank page framed in glass. It reminded me that silence could be rewritten. Then, one evening, a message popped up on Facebook Messenger from my mother. It had been 3 years since we'd spoken. "Mom, hey honey, your father's not feeling well. He's been asking about you. Maybe you could call me. I'll think about it. Mom, please Mark, he's your father." That was her weapon, guilt dressed as love. I didn't reply. The next day, she posted a family photo on her profile, her, Dad, and my sister, Lily, smiling at a charity dinner. The caption read, "Family is everything." No tag for me. Not even a mention. That was the night I deleted my social media for good. Now, standing outside their house again, all of it felt too close. The windows were glowing warm, the same illusion of comfort I'd grown up with. I parked the car, grabbed the sealed envelope, and walked up the path. The air smelled like rain and lemon polish. When I knocked, it was Lily who answered. For a moment, I almost didn't recognize her. The last time I saw her, she was a teenager in braces. Now she was 26, hair tied back, wearing that same beige tone our mother loved so much. "Mark," she said, blinking. "Hey, kid, I can't believe you're here." Her voice carried the same softness Mom's did, but not the same fear. Not yet. We hugged awkwardly, half real, half memory. When we stepped apart, she looked down at the envelope in my hand. "Is that—" "Yeah." She nodded. I figured. "They've been talking about it for weeks. About the will. About you. Mostly." That hurt more than I wanted it to. In the living room, my parents were waiting again. This time more composed. The lawyer wasn't here. Just the 3 of them, and now me. I placed the envelope on the table. "I'm not signing," I said simply. Mom's expression didn't change. Dad's did. His eyes hardened the way concrete does before it cracks. "I expected this," he said. "You've always had to make a spectacle out of everything." "It's not a spectacle, it's a boundary," he scoffed. "You think refusing this makes you noble. You're still a boy trying to prove something." "I'm not trying to prove anything," I said quietly. "I just don't need your money." That got a reaction, A flicker of confusion then. Anger. Where do you think you got your writing talent? He said. You think it just appeared out of nowhere? You learned discipline here. Discipline? I said, my voice sharp for the first time. You mean fear. The word hung in the air like smoke. Mom flinched. Lily shifted in her seat, eyes darting between us. Please, not again, she whispered. But it was too late. You want to talk about fear, he said, standing. Let's talk about responsibility. You've spent your whole life blaming us for your failures. You could have been part of something stable, this family, this business, but you chose to run off and write about your feelings. I almost laughed. That's the problem, Dad. You think feelings are optional, and you think they're currency. He took a step closer. You write about us again. You'll regret it. That was when I realized something new. He wasn't just trying to silence me for reputation's sake. He was scared, truly scared. What are you afraid I'll say? I asked softly. He froze. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Lily, trembling, said, Mark, please stop. But her eyes, they were asking a different question. What happened that I don't know about? I didn't stay long. Before leaving, I turned to my mother. You could have stopped this years ago. She looked at me, tears forming. I tried. No, I said. You adjusted. I walked out before she could respond. Outside. The air was cool, the wind carrying the faint smell of rain. That I got in the car. Sat there for a long time, and finally exhaled. That's when my phone buzzed. A new message, unknown number. Lily, I need to talk. Not here. My fingers froze. Me. What's going on? Lily, just meet me. Tomorrow. The diner near the bridge, noon. I didn't sleep much that night. Dreams came in fragments. Dad's voice echoing through the halls, Mom's quiet apologies. Lily crying in the kitchen when she was little because he'd yelled at her for spilling juice. Only this time, in the dream, I wasn't the one watching. I was the one walking away. When morning came, I felt a strange kind of clarity. I wasn't angry anymore. Just tired. Tired of their version of the truth. At the diner, Lily was already there, sitting in a corner booth with her hands wrapped around a mug of coffee. She looked smaller somehow, like the weight of the house had followed her out. I'm sorry, she said before I even sat down. For what? For everything. For not saying anything last night. Her voice trembled. I thought it was normal, she continued. The way he is, the way she defends him. But when I heard what they wanted you to sign, I realized it wasn't about protecting us. It was about protecting him. My stomach sank. What do you mean? She glanced around, then slid her phone across the table. On the screen was a series of emails, all between my father and a local contractor. The subject lines made my chest tighten. Rowan Property Development. Off-book transfer payment discrepancy urgent. Delete records before audit. He's been moving money through fake accounts, Lily said, under the company's name. If it gets out, it'll ruin him. And Mom, she knows. She always knows. I sat back, the noise of the diner fading into a hum. It all clicked. The clause, the rush, the sudden inheritance. It wasn't a family gesture. It was a bribe. They want me quiet before this leaks, I said. Lily nodded, tears spilling. He's already talking about changing the will again. He's scared of what you'll do. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Then I said softly, you don't have to stay there, you know. Her eyes lifted. It's still home. No, I said. It's just where we learned to survive. She gave a sad smile. You always were the brave one. I shook my head. Not brave, just done. Just a draft, a confession no one would ever read. But truth has a way of breathing on its own once it's written. By the third day, I'd filled 30 pages, each one burned a little, each one healed a little more. I didn't plan to publish it, not yet, but then the email came from Michael Green, an old editor I'd met years ago at a writing conference. Heard you're working on something powerful. If you ever want a platform, you know where to find me. I hadn't told anyone about the silence clause, not even Lily. I stared at that message for a long time. Was it possible my parents had already found out? For the next few days, I tried to act normal. I worked, went to the gym, made coffee, pretended not to check my phone every hour. But the tension was constant, like a string pulled too tight. Then, one evening, I came home to find a letter taped to my door. No envelope. Just a folded sheet of paper. Stop writing. Family first. No signature. But the handwriting was unmistakable. My father's, deliberate, sharp, precise. That night, I sat at my desk with the letter beside my laptop. It didn't make me angry. It made me curious. What exactly were they so afraid of? If it was just the money, fine. If it was reputation, predictable. But this level of panic felt deeper. I opened my laptop again and read what I'd written so far. The words were raw, to honest maybe. I described moments I'd buried for decades, my father's quiet punishments, my mother's complicit smiles, the way the house itself seemed to listen. I wasn't sure what scared me more, the possibility of them finding out, or the thought of stopping. The next morning, I met Lily again, this time at a park on the edge of town. She looked exhausted. "They're watching you," she said quietly. "Dad asked me to check your social media. He thinks you're writing something about him." "I am," I said. "But it's not about revenge. Try telling him that." We sat on a bench overlooking the pond. Ducks drifted across the water, calm and oblivious. "He's paranoid," she said. "Every time his phone rings, he jumps. I heard him yelling at Mom last night. Something about accounts being traced. By who? By the auditors. Someone reported irregularities." "Wasn't me," I said. "I know. But he thinks." "It was." She paused. "You should leave town for a bit." I shook my head. "Running is what they expect me to do. This isn't about pride, Mark. He's losing control." "When that happens," she trailed off. I knew how that sentence ended. Later that week, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, a woman's voice said, "Mr. Rowan, this is Detective Ferris, County Financial Crimes Division. We're conducting a quiet inquiry into Rowan Properties. You might have information that could assist us." I didn't speak for a moment. "How did you get my number? We've spoken with your sister." I froze. "Is she okay?" "She's fine. She just mentioned you might have documentation relevant to our case." I almost laughed. Documentation? All I had was a story, a half-finished confession. "Mr. Rowan," the detective said, "if you'd be willing to meet, we could ensure your name stays out of the public record." That was the moment it all flipped, when I realized my silence wasn't just a family expectation anymore. It was a legal weapon. That night, I called Lily. "What did you tell them?" "Nothing." She said quickly, "I just mentioned you knew things, that you'd seen how he did business." "Lily, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to drag you in. They said they already had evidence." I sighed. "It's fine. Maybe it's time." "Time for what?" "To stop protecting people who never protected us." There was a pause, then a whisper. "I'm scared." "Mark, I know," I said softly. "So am I." A few days later, I met with Detective Ferris at a small cafe. She was calm, methodical, with the kind of steady voice that made you want to tell the truth. "Your father's company is under review for embezzlement," she explained. "We believe he's been moving money into offshore accounts under employee names. Sounds like him. We've traced some documents to your mother's email. She's complicit." I didn't react. "Not visibly, Mr. Rowan," she said, leaning in slightly. "You wrote a piece called The Silence Clause. Is it based on fact?" I stared at her. "How do you know about that?" "Someone sent us excerpts." My stomach dropped. "Who? We can't disclose that." I felt my pulse climb. That story wasn't public. It was on my computer. She tilted her head. "Maybe you should check who has access to your files." When I got home, I opened my laptop. Sure enough, the document was still there, but the file had been opened yesterday by someone else. I scanned the log. A remote access IP address traced back to my mother's account. She'd hacked me, or rather, she'd had someone do it. A wave of anger surged up, cold and clean. That night, I wrote again, not the story this time, but a letter. "You taught me to stay quiet. You told me silence was strength, but silence is only strength for the one holding the leash." I printed it, sealed it in an envelope, and drove to their house. The gates were open this time. The house looked smaller, lonelier. Mom answered the door, pale and tired. "I know you. Read my files," I said. She didn't deny it. "You're putting us in danger, Mark." "No, Mom. I'm telling the truth." You don't understand what this will do to your father. He did it to himself." She closed her eyes. "He's sick. He's guilty." Her hand trembled as she reached for me. "Please, don't destroy us." I stepped back. "You did that years ago." I left the envelope on the porch and walked away. 3 days later, everything erupted. A news alert flashed across my phone. Rowan Properties under federal investigation. CEO denies allegations. His face was on every channel, stern, righteous, calling it a witch hunt. My mother stood beside him during the press statement, composed, loyal as ever, and Lily as she was gone. No calls, no texts. Her apartment voicemail just said, "This mailbox is full." For the first time in years, I felt afraid. Not of him, but of what silence might be costing her now. I went to her apartment. The door was locked, lights off. I knocked for 10 minutes. Nothing. Then, just as I turned to leave, a neighbor stepped out. "You looking for Lily?" he asked. "Yeah, she left yesterday. Packed a bag. Didn't say where she was going." My chest tightened. That night, I drove until dawn past the city, into the mountains, where the air finally felt clean. I stopped at a lookout and just sat there, the world quiet around me. I thought about what would happen if I stayed silent, if I deleted the file, if I signed that clause, took the money, and let the past bury itself. For a moment, it sounded peaceful. But peace built on silence always costs too much. When I got back to town, I called Michael Green. "You still want that story?" I asked. "Always," he said. "But I need it verified. Documents, names, everything. I'll get them. Then you'll have to decide. Are you ready to burn bridges that can't be rebuilt?" I didn't answer. That night, I went through every old folder, every box, every scrap of paper from my father's office I'd ever kept. Invoices, receipts, emails. I'd saved them without realizing why. Fragments of a childhood built on business meetings, and fear. At the bottom of the box, I found a small black ledger with my father's handwriting, rows of numbers. Dates, and a final entry that froze me. Transfer LR account, $250, OOL, R. Lily Rowan. He'd been using her name too. I sent Michael photos of the pages. Within hours, he called back. "This is real," he said. "We can run it, but you'll be part of the fallout. Are you sure you're ready?" "No," I said honestly. "But I'm done being quiet." He paused. "Then I'll see you in print." The next morning, the article went live. Headline: "The Silence Clause. Son of Rowan Properties CEO breaks his silence on family corruption." The story spread fast. Some called me brave. Some called me a liar. My father called me at 3 a.m. "Do you know what you've done?" he said, his voice shaking. "Yes," I said. "You've ruined this family." "No," I said quietly. "I've freed it." There was a long silence, then the click of the line disconnecting. By noon, news vans crowded outside their house. By evening, investigators confirmed the ledgers. By midnight, arrest warrants were filed. Mom didn't call, neither did Lily. I didn't sleep. But for the first time in my life, the silence in my apartment didn't feel like punishment. It felt earned. The next morning, I got an email. No subject line, no sender, just one sentence: "You did the right thing." Lee stared at it for a long time, the letters blurring. Then I closed the laptop and stepped outside. The world was loud again, cars, voices, wind. And for once, I didn't want to quiet any of it. Morning came with rain. It wasn't the soft, movie kind of rain. It was sharp, gray, relentless. The kind that erases color and sound until the whole world feels like it's holding its breath. I sat on my balcony, coffee in hand, the city below me humming with sirens and distant thunder. It had been 3 days since the silence clause went public. 3 days since my name became synonymous with betrayal and courage, depending on who you asked. The paper called me the whistleblower son. My father called me a disgrace. The truth sat somewhere in between. That morning, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I let it ring once, twice, then answered. "Mark Rowan?" "Yes, this is Detective Ferris. We've arrested your father." For a moment, I didn't breathe. "Charges?" I asked quietly. "Wire fraud, embezzlement, tax evasion. There'll be more once the accounts are verified." "He's refusing." Counsel until he speaks with you. With me, yes. He says he won't say a word otherwise. I leaned against the railing. The rain hit harder. When? As soon as you can make it to county. The drive there was a blur. The rain made everything slow. Cars crawling. Lights reflecting off puddles like shards of glass. The city felt smaller somehow. Like a stage after the play had ended. When I arrived, Detective Ferris led me to a small interview room. Concrete walls, metal table, 2 chairs. He was already there, sitting straight-backed, still in the same navy suit he'd worn for decades, even behind glass. My father carried authority like a scent that wouldn't wash off. When the door shut, he looked up. Sit. He said, "Old habits." I obeyed. For a long moment, we said nothing. The hum of fluorescent light filled the silence. Then he spoke. "You think you did something noble." "I did something honest." He gave a dry laugh. "Honesty is just pride dressed up for church." "I didn't do it to destroy you," I said. "I did it to stop living under you. You've always been dramatic, Mark, and you've always been a coward." His eyes flashed, a small, dangerous glint. "You think you understand what I built, what it takes to hold something together. You don't. You've never had to make the hard choices, like stealing, like surviving." He leaned forward. "You don't know what your mother asked of me." That stopped me. "What do you mean?" He looked down at his hands. The same hands that used to tighten my tie before school. The same ones that slapped the table when I questioned him. "She wanted out. Years ago. After you left for college. She said she couldn't live with the lies anymore. So you blackmailed her with loyalty." He smiled faintly. "I reminded her what silence costs. You never understood. Every family needs a silence clause. A rule that keeps the truth from killing what's left." I sat back, disgusted. "You think fear is family?" He shrugged. "It worked, didn't it?" I stood. "Not anymore." As I reached for the door, he said, almost softly, "You think you've won. But you've got blood in this too. You just don't know it yet." I didn't sleep that night. His words looped in my head. "You just don't know it yet." What blood? What truth? Around 3 a.m., I texted Lily again. Still nothing. I opened my email. That same message, "You did the right thing. Was still there. Something about it felt off. To formal. Lily never signed with just an initial. A small unease started to bloom. The next morning, I called Ferris again. "Have you found my sister?" "She's cooperating," the detective said. Carefully. "Cooperating how?" "She's been helping us trace your mother's accounts." "My mother's?" "Yes. We've discovered funds in her name that connect directly to the offshore accounts. She's not innocent in this, Mr. Rowan." I felt my stomach twist. "You think she knew?" Ferris didn't answer. 2 days later, I got another call. This time from her. "Mom." There was a pause on the line. Her voice came quiet, tired. I didn't know who else to call. "I heard about the accounts. They're saying terrible things." "Are they true?" Silence. Finally, she said, "I thought if I stayed quiet, it would protect us." The same sentence she used to say when I was a child, when Dad would yell, when Brandon got everything, when she'd pour herself another drink and whisper, "Not tonight." "You didn't protect us," I said. "You protected him." He made me sign things, documents I didn't understand. "Then why didn't you say something?" "Because silence was safer." Her voice cracked. "I just wanted peace. Peace. The family's favorite lie." I hung up. Not out of anger, out of exhaustion. That evening, I went to the lake where Lily and I used to go as kids. It was quiet there. Just the soft slap of water against the dock, the smell of wet wood and pine. That's where I found her. She was sitting on the edge of the dock, knees pulled to her chest, hair blowing in the cold air. When she turned, I saw she'd been crying. "You found me," she said. "I always do." I sat beside her. For a long while, we didn't speak. Then she said, "I turned Mommin." I looked at her. "You what?" She was still moving money, even after Dad's arrest. Smaller amounts, but steady. I told Ferris, "You shouldn't have had to." "She made me," Lily said. "She used my accounts again, said it was temporary. I didn't want to get dragged down too." She looked out at the lake. "Do you remember what Dad used to say when we were little? Loyalty first, questions later." I nodded. "Yeah, and you believed him. So did you." She said softly, "We both did." We sat in the silence. We'd both inherited, heavy, familiar, almost comfortable. I keep thinking, she whispered. What if we're just like them? We're not. How do you know? I looked at her, at the tired eyes, the shaking hands. Because we're here, we're asking. The next day, the case exploded. Headlines screamed Rowan matriarch implicated in offshore scheme. News. Vans camped outside their estate. Reporters dug up everything. The restaurants, the charities, the fake accounts. By sunset, the empire was ash. That night, Lily showed up at my door with a small brown box. I found this, she said. Dad kept it in the attic safe. I think you should see it. Inside were old photos, a few receipts, and one yellowed envelope with my name written on it in my mother's handwriting. I opened it carefully. Inside was a letter dated 12 years ago. The year I left for college. Mark, if you're reading this, something has gone wrong. I wanted to tell you the truth, but your father wouldn't let me. He said silence would save us. I believed him. The money in the accounts isn't all his. Some of it is yours, your tuition, your savings. He used your name for the transfers. I signed them because I was scared. I thought it would all come back eventually. I'm sorry. Please forgive me if you can. Mom. I sat back, the words blurring. He hadn't just used her. He'd used me. My own name, my own accounts. The silence clause wasn't just about secrecy. It was protection, legal, moral, emotional, a way to tie us all together so no one could speak without condemning themselves. I'd thought breaking the silence would free me, but now I saw the deeper truth. It made me complicit too. For the next week, reporters flooded my inbox. They wanted interviews, follow-ups, book deals. Michael said, you could turn this into a bestseller. The public loves redemption arcs, but redemption wasn't what I felt. I felt hollow, like the truth had stripped everything bare, and there was nothing left but noise. Then one night, I got another call from Detective Ferris. Your mother's asking to see you. I hesitated. What does she want? She said she wants to tell you something before the trial. The holding center smelled like disinfectant and metal. She looked smaller behind the glass, older, brittle, her hands trembling slightly. As she picked up the phone, Mark, she whispered, I didn't mean for it to go this far. I know. Your father said if I told you, you'd never forgive me. He was right. She flinched but didn't look away. There's one more thing you need to know. The accounts, they weren't just business. They were insurance. Insurance for what? For you. For Lily. He always said one day you'd both come for him. He hid your inheritance inside the crime. If the truth came out, you'd lose it too. I went cold. You're saying the money's ours, in part. But now it's evidence. It's all tainted. She pressed her hand to the glass. He made sure silence was survival. For all of us. I didn't touch the glass back. I couldn't. When I left the facility, the air outside was crisp, the sky pale gray. It should have felt like closure. It didn't. The following weeks blurred into hearings, headlines, and depositions. Dad pleaded not guilty. Mom took a deal. Lily testified quietly, her voice shaking, but firm. The family that once demanded silence now lived under microphones. Every secret was public. Every lie was quoted. And me, I became both witness and weapon. When the trial finally ended, the verdict came fast. Guilty on all counts. Dad got 20 years. Mom got 5 with parole. The silence clause was broken, officially, publicly, permanently. But peace didn't come right away. It came in pieces, small moments, coffee without dread, morning without phone calls, laughter that didn't feel borrowed. A few months later, Lily and I sold what was left of the family estate. The house was empty except for echoes, footsteps, arguments, ghosts. Before we left, she stood in the living room and whispered, you ever think about forgiving them? Sometimes, I said. Do you think you ever will? I think forgiveness is just another kind of silence. She nodded. Then let's make some noise. We both laughed, tired but free. A year later, my book came out. Not a memoir, not a revenge piece, something in between. It was called The Silence Clause, of course. I didn't plan to go to the courthouse that morning, but something in me needed to see it, to watch the curtain fall, to make sure the silence that ruled my childhood finally broke in public light. The sky was pale gray when I arrived. Reporters swarmed the steps like gulls, their cameras already trained on the building's front doors. Inside, the air smelled of dust and cold marble. Every sound echoed. When the bailiff called State versus Rowan Properties, I felt my stomach twist. And then he entered, my father, flanked by two attorneys. He looked smaller than I remembered. Not fragile, just diminished, like a statue, worn smooth by weather. His eyes flicked toward the gallery, searching, calculating. Then he saw me. For a second, his expression didn't change. Then his mouth tightened, the same restrained fury I'd seen since I was 6. The silence between us said everything. The trial wasn't a spectacle, not yet. The charges were read, the motions filed, the usual theater of procedure. But the evidence was solid. Emails, ledgers, bank transfers under false names, including Lily's. When her name was mentioned, I felt the entire courtroom glance toward me. My mother sat to rows behind the defense, clutching her purse as if it could anchor her. She wouldn't look my way. When the judge adjourned for lunch, she stood and walked out quickly, her heels clicking like metronomes in the hall. I followed her. Mom. She stopped but didn't turn around. I didn't want this, I said. I wanted truth. She exhaled shakily. You think truth saves anyone? Truth destroys. That's why we made the deal, the silence clause. I stepped closer. There was a deal? Her voice lowered. When your father's first company collapsed years ago, he agreed with investors. They'd bail him out if we stayed quiet about where the money went. He signed what he called the silence clause. That was the start. Every license grew from that. Why didn't you stop him? Because I was protecting you. I almost laughed. You protected his image. Not me. She finally turned then. Her eyes were red, mascara bleeding at the edges. I'm sorry. She whispered, but your sister, she didn't deserve what's coming. I frowned. What do you mean? But she was already walking away. That night, I drove to Lily's old apartment again. The lights were still off, but there was a note under the door this time. It said, "Stop digging, Mark. You'll only find me in the dark." I read it twice, then checked the handwriting. It wasn't hers. The next morning, I met Detective Ferris again. She's gone, I said. Someone's keeping her hidden. The detective nodded grimly. We traced her account activity. She withdrew a large sum, about $250,000, right before the indictments. Money your father transferred months earlier. So she's involved, not exactly. She might have taken the money to protect herself. But until she comes forward, we can't know. My mind raced. You think he planned that, using her name, making her the scapegoat? It fits his pattern. Ferris leaned forward. If we can find her, this case ends faster. Do you know where she'd go? I thought of one place, the cabin our father used to take us to as kids. High in the woods near Lake Brenton. She used to call it the Quiet House. I found her there 2 nights later. The door was unlocked. The air smelled of pine and old smoke. She was sitting by the window, staring at the trees, a duffel bag by her feet. You shouldn't have come. She said softly, you left me a note. Not me, him. She turned, and I saw the fear in her face. He called me from jail, said if I didn't take the money and disappear, he'd tell them I helped him. He wanted someone else to carry the guilt. Then why not come forward? Because he's not done. You think he'll rot quietly. He's still moving pieces, even from inside. I sat down across from her. Then let's end it. She shook her head. You can't fight a man like him in court, Mark. You fight him by taking away what he values most, which is control. The next morning, I made a decision. If silence had been his weapon all these years, noise would be mine. I called Michael Green and told him we'd release everything, every document, every recording, every ledger, publicly, no paywalls, no rights reserved, just truth. He hesitated. That's career suicide, Mark. I don't care. We spent the night uploading everything to an open archive. The files spread faster than expected. Journalists, watchdogs, whistleblower sites. By dawn, Rowan Properties was finished. By noon, new indictments rolled in, not just fraud, but witness tampering and obstruction. And by sunset, my father's attorneys withdrew. 3 days later, he requested a visit. I almost said no. but some part of me needed to look him in the eye one last time. The prison visiting room was sterile, all concrete and fluorescent hum. He walked in wearing that same hollow composure, sat across the glass, and picked up the phone. "I suppose you think you've won," he said. "I didn't want to win," I said. "I wanted you to stop lying." He leaned forward. "Do you know what truth costs? It ruins legacies, families. It turns love into pity." "No," I said quietly. "It turns fear into freedom." For the first time, he didn't have a reply. He just stared at me, the man who broke his silence, and saw something he couldn't control. When the guard signaled time's up, I stood. He didn't dot as I turned to leave. I heard his voice behind the glass. Silence was supposed to save us. I stopped. "No, Dad. It just kept us chained." Weeks passed. The noise faded. News moved on. The world didn't end. Mom sold the house and moved out of state. She sent one letter, short, distant, filled with the kind of regret that sounds more like exhaustion. Lily disappeared again. This time for good. Sometimes she sends postcards from random cities. No words, just quiet reminders that she's alive. And me, I finished the book. It's called The Silence Clause. Just like the article, but this time it isn't about revenge. It's about how silence can rot a family from the inside out, and how speaking, even when it hurts, is the only way out of the dark. On the night before publication, I walked down to the same lake where this all began. The air was cool, the water still. I thought of every moment I'd stayed quiet, the bruises I'd ignored, the truths I'd swallowed, the apologies I'd rehearsed but never heard. Then I whispered into the wind, "It's over." For the first time, the silence that followed didn't feel heavy. It felt like peace. If you like history, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story. In the comments, to listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching. *.